Welcome to the Green Urbanist podcast, where we explore climate action in cities with the people who are making it happen. Hosted by me, Ross O'Kelly, an urban designer and sustainability educator. Today's episode is a conversation with Helen Meech.
I'm Helen Meech and I'm Executive Director of the Climate Coalition.
Helen came on the podcast to talk about her work in mobilising climate action at scale across Britain. So this is about the Climate Coalition, the organisation that she leads, which is about bringing together different environmental and climate-related organisations together to coordinate their efforts. But in particular, we talk about their yearly event, which is called the Great Big Green Week. Now, the Great Big Green Week is all about supporting people to have local environmental related events or activities in their local area over the course of a week during the summer. And the point of this is about really showing people how sustainability works and celebrating the transition towards a more sustainable society, more sustainable lifestyles, and in a way bringing this into people's communities through, real hands-on events, so that it isn't something theoretical, but it's actually something people can experience, that they can see, that they can have fun with, that it can fit into their life, and that it kind of demystifies it in a way. Over the last couple of years, the Great Big Green Week has been hugely successful. She talks about in the episode the kind of numbers of people that they're able to reach through all the various events that are going on, community-led events. Thousands and thousands of people, interacting with these events all across Britain. And the next Great Big Green Week in 2026 is from the 6th to the 14th of June. I'll leave a link in the episode description so you can go and check that out and see what events are happening near you. And you can also propose to host an event and have that put on the website as well. What I find so interesting about this is it's one answer to the question of how do you get, the large amount of people involved in climate change, climate action, environmental action that we know we need to get involved at scale. We need huge parts of society to be actively and proactively engaging in positive environmental action. Anyway, we talk about this in a much more, Helen talks about it in a much more eloquent way in the podcast, so I'll stop rambling now and let us get into the discussion. Obviously, lots and lots, probably most of these activities that are happening during Great Big Green Week are happening in towns and cities. So for us as, urbanists or people involved or interested in the built environment, these kind of ways that communities can come together, even on a temporary basis, to do these kind of activities should be of interest to us. And I think there's a real place-making aspect and community-building aspect to this that we should be, paying attention to. Links to the Climate Coalition and the Great Big Green Week are in the episode description. Before we jump into the podcast, just a little update. I know it's obviously been a few months since the last episode, and I still don't have a good schedule worked out for the Green Urbanist at the moment. For those of you who aren't aware, back in October I launched a new non-profit which is called Urban Wilding Hub, and that's all about helping to mainstream rewilding as a proactive climate and biodiversity solution in cities across Europe. That has been gaining momentum and has been, the support for that has been growing and growing. And so I've been whatever spare time I have, I've been focusing on building that. And that means I haven't had time for the Green Urbanist. But I will still hopefully be releasing occasional episodes like this, where a good opportunity comes up to speak to someone really interesting, until I figure out how to work in more regular episodes into my schedule. So thank you for your patience with that. Okay, that's it for now. Enjoy the podcast. So tell me, what is the Climate Coalition? What do you do? What are you sort of trying to achieve?
So the Climate Coalition is founded around the core belief that people are powerful, especially when we come together. So we're the largest coalition of organisations dedicated to action for people, climate and nature. I've been working in the environment movement for about 25 years. And what really motivates me is that sense of kind of collective impact. When we come together, we can have more impact together. And at the Climate Coalition, a lot of our work is centred around giving people agency and hope, around connecting all of the activity that happens in communities across the UK at local level with national politics and vice versa. So it's a really motivating place to work.
Yeah, absolutely. And what sort of organisations are sort of in the coalition?
So it's a really, really broad coalition. So we have over 130 member organisations, from great big household names like the National Trust and RSPB to Oxfam, through to volunteer-led community groups like the Climate Hub in my local town. So collectively, we have a combined reach of over 20 million people. So we have huge collective reach, but also I think it's that breadth of our membership that makes us really distinctive. So faith groups, nature conservation charities, international development organisations, community groups, youth groups, health organisations, and we all come together and unite around a shared goal.
So is the idea that you're kind of coordinating your activities together so that you sort of have maximum impact?
Yeah, we're a small team at the centre. We're a small secretariat team, and our role is to kind of facilitate collective action, to bring those organisations together, to identify some shared goals and some ways in which we can bring organisations together to achieve them. We also work a lot directly with community groups. So we work with a network of about 3,500 local community organisers across the UK. So we can be that bridge between those local grassroots groups and those larger organisations and provide shared moments, shared resources that allow us to all work together at the same time to have a greater impact together.
I mean, one of the things I've recently started a new kind of small organisation called Urban Wilding Hub, which is all about trying to scale up rewilding in towns and cities. And one of the things that I've found early days is it's all about relationships, and it's all about talking to people who are doing similar work, or who can offer some advice, or who you could, share support with or whatever. So yeah, I think a lot of people, I'm sure, can see the value in that work.
Yeah, so much of the work is relational. It's about how do you bring people together, how do you sort of create that space for conversation. And quite often we'll find someone, you say, oh, you're working on that thing, or we're doing that too, let's team up, and can kind of, have more impact by working together. Yeah,
and what I found is that people are in the climate, sustainability, ecology, they all want to help each other because we're all, moving in the same direction. We're working towards the same goals. So it's quite nice, particularly for those who have also worked in a more competitive business environment. It's like a very different thing when you go and talk to people in other organizations and they all want to help you out and connect you together. It's great.
Yeah, it's that sense of shared purpose. We're all working towards the end goal, and people might have slightly different views on the ways to get there, but that's part of what our role to do is to kind of to keep people focused on that shared goal, and that is around, we want the UK to be a global leader for climate and nature, and we've kind of got some shared sort of goals that link to that, so ensuring that action for climate is financed both here in the UK, around the world. The transition to a lower carbon future is one that's just and fair for everyone, and that we restore nature now at scale. And so, they are three broad asks, but there's a lot of consensus around them. So it really helps with bringing people together to create moments and actions and events around those three key things.
So how does the Great Big Green Week, what's that about, and how does that fit into the bigger picture?
So Great Big Green Week is the UK's biggest annual celebration of community action for people, climate, nature. It happens each June. Communities across the country run events, a really, really broad range of events, from kind of nature walks, repair cafes, film screenings, community growing projects, rewilding projects, cycling events, kind of opening up new green spaces that aren't always open to the public. A really, really diverse range of events. And what it does is it shows that action for people, climate, nature is popular, it's mainstream, and it's happening near you, and there's something directly relevant to you that you can get involved with. And one thing I was really thinking about this, and especially kind of with your interests and your listeners' interests, like a lot of Great Big Green Week is actually about pride of place. People are organising events not necessarily because they're thinking about net zero or carbon emissions. They're thinking, I really love this park and I want to share it, or this community garden really matters to me. And so it's that emotional connection to place is a real engine of this action. It's about, we love this place, we want to celebrate it and invite others into making the place where we live better. And so it's it's focused around events, but those events act as an invitation. So we find that consistently year on year, about a third of people that come to Great Big Green Week events have never engaged with nature or climate before. They come because it's organised by their sports club or their school or their face group, or it's something free to take the kids to at the weekend. So they come into it for a raft of different reasons, but because it feels directly relevant to their everyday lives. But the vast majority of them want to do more. So it's a really powerful moment, and one we're really proud of.
What do you see the local impact being of doing all these, small scale events across the country, across Britain? Yeah, so it's powerful locally because these places and they get defended, they get invested in, it invites people in, it kind of really taps into that dynamic. And it brings communities together too, because when a community comes together to go on a walk together or to plant bulbs together or have a street picnic, they're not just taking that one action, they're like reinforcing their attachment to that place. And research shows that kind of love of place, love of nature are really powerful drivers of pro-environmental behaviour. So it helps really kind of bring that connection to place. It also helps bring communities together. Again, our kind of research on Great Big Green Week, we evaluate every year, and we're finding that it brings kind of groups together within communities that wouldn't necessarily talk to each other on a day-to-day, but by kind of creating this sort of shared focal moment. And different groups are coming together. So, a faith group might work with a sports club, for example, to put on an event. And so it's really sort of helping bring those communities together in a way that enables them to do more together, but also kind of helps with that feeling. The media tells us a lot that we are divided right now. But the reality on the ground is quite different, and there's a lot of hope out there. So it's about really surfacing that hope in a way that others can feel a sense of, I could do something too, and I'm going to get involved. Yeah, I mean, I think you were as you were talking, I was thinking about this book on my shelf, which is the From What Is to What If by Rob Hopkins.
Love that book.
Everyone, it's just very popular among our kind of community. But he has this great quote in it that I never forget, which is, if we try to do things ourselves, it'll be too little. If we wait for government, it'll be too late. But if we do it together as communities, it might be enough, and it might be in time.
Yeah.
Talking about climate action, and I really see that more and more of how important the community scale is. And the kind of neighborhood scale and the town scale, and in terms of actually to get local action happening, waiting around for the sort of big powerful players to sort of sort things out for us is not. It's clearly not working all the time. So and it takes a lot of work for people to just put in their free time, put in their kind of labor and emotional labor into making things happen on a local level. But it's also, people always talk about how enriching it is for their lives. So I think it's wonderful that you're able to kind of give a sense of what's the word I'm looking for, like giving the sense of enough people coming together that it really makes a difference across the whole nation is quite inspiring. Yeah,
it's definitely. I feel so lucky that I get to spend Great Big Green Week going out and meeting lots of different people and going to their events. But what I experience across all of them, although I said they're all so different, like across all of them, there's this real sense of joy and a connection to place or each other, to sort of a shared cause and a shared purpose, which is really powerful. And it's getting bigger year on year. So it's Great Big Green Week has doubled in size year on year for the last 4 years. Wow. In 2025, we reached over 1.2 million people through just under 6,000 events across the UK. and we think we're on track to reach over 2 million people this year in 2026. And one of the things that we hear from our event organisers is that feeling of being part of something bigger really matters to them, that feeling that they are part of this sort of broader movement. And we just did a focus group actually with some of the organisers from last year's week, and they told us that that feeling kind of connected and knowing there are things happening elsewhere across the UK, it helps build their confidence, and it's helping that feeling of being like Great Big Green Week isn't just, it is a week, but it's not just a moment to people in those places. It's kind of the week at which that spotlight shines on what they're all doing, but actually it just is a bit of infrastructure that enables them to kind of bring in more people to what they're doing, to kind of celebrate what they're doing, and to invite others in. As I said, these events as much as anything are an invitation to get involved, and that's proving really powerful.
What have been some of your kind of standout events that have happened locally over the years?
I have been to some crackers, and all so different. So, everything from kind of film screenings to repair cafes to kind of village fetes. They're all so different. One that really stood out to me was last year I went for a walk in the woods with the Bristol Stepping Sisters. And the Stepping Sisters is a group that encourages women of colour to get out into outside, but recognising that the countryside is not always a welcoming place, particularly for people of colour and particularly for women of colour. So by going out in groups, it kind of helps build that confidence. They do a little bit of kind of work around safeguarding and self-defence. And it was a really, really rainy Saturday. And I arrived and there was a campfire, and I was really warmly welcomed in, and actually they'd been for a little bit of a walk before I met them, but actually most of the time was sitting around the campfire, sharing food together, sharing stories and sharing stories of the place and like why this patch of woodland really mattered to that group of women. What it means to their mental health, what it means to their sense of identity and place, but crucially what it meant for them as a group who could come together. It was, I felt very, very welcomed, and it was a real privilege to be invited into that group. And it really made me think, we talked a bit about kind of Great Big Green Week and kind of connection to place. One of the things that I find really exciting about Great Big Green Week is like it gives you a window in, but also supports people in their relationship with their local environment. Like what we hear time and time again is that from our organisers is that the week really changes how people can see their local environment. They notice the places that they might have taken for granted. They discover others, other neighbours, others within their community who might share their values. They feel this renewed sense of ownership to the places that they live in and the places that they love. And I think that shift really matters. A community that feels really attached to a place is much more likely to stand up for it, right? Like they're much more likely to push back if a green space is threatened. They're more likely to engage in kind of planning issues. They're more likely to support local climate strategies. Great Big Green Week it's not just a week of events. It's about kind of contributing to our nation's civic infrastructure, and it leads to like really tangible legacies. So like community gardens that started as Great Big Green Week events like can go on to become permanent things. People will go on a nature walk, they might then end up kind of going to see their MP and lobbying them for kind of more protection for nature in the local area. There was an event with our local MP last year, and that's led to kind of like an ongoing programme of public engagement around local climate issues with our MP. So it's very much kind of a launch pad in a way that feels much needed.
It strikes me as well that it probably provides for lots of people a kind of a window for the day or for the week into what like a different kind of future might look like, where people are mending and reusing, fixing items and reusing them rather than throwing them away and buying new ones, spending more time in nature, protecting their local green spaces. spending more time together as a community rather than as individuals. Like there's so many, like a lot of things around a sustainable future are not just about like how the tech around us changes and the infrastructure changes, but also just like how there's these changes to our lifestyles that end up being cumulatively really important for not only like the emission story, but also like our well-being, our health, and our impact on the environment in broader terms as well.
Yeah, definitely. And it's around joy as well. There's a lot of joy in Great Big Green Week. I think I've probably said that already. But I think that's one of the things that's special about it. It is a celebration. It's a week of celebrating. The action's already happening. And all too often it can feel, especially, the way that it's often talked about in the media, climate or nature loss, it can feel quite distant. It can feel quite intangible. But this sort of makes it really relevant to people's everyday lives. It's not about some distant target. It's about saving money on your energy bill. It's about kind of having good, healthy food to put on the table. It's about kind of connecting with others that share the love of the place where you live, or like want to take action to make the place that they live better. It really helps build that sense of agency and power. And there's deep joy to be found within that. You
mentioned earlier about, some of your big aims around influencing government and advocating to government to do more on climate. How do you feel like Great Big Green Week has contributed to that?
So a huge number of events are attended by local politicians, both local councillors and their MPs. Also, last year we held a mass lobby of Parliament where we took about 5,000 people down to Westminster 3 weeks after last year's Great Big Green Week, so we could tell those stories of community action. Not we could, those folk could go and tell their stories of action, what's happening in their local constituency, directly to their MP. And I think what that does is it kind of shows that there is leadership happening everywhere, and it kind of helps create that space for politicians to step into that leadership and to play their role. You talked a bit about that quote just now from Rob Hopkins. I've seen kind of a similar analysis by an academic, Professor Matthew Agrala, who's at Cambridge University, I believe, and he talks about it as the Shirkers Triangle. MPs say, we need to hear from businesses and our constituencies what they want, and then businesses like, we'll do what the consumer tells us, and the consumers and the public are like, we're just doing what the policies and the businesses are offering us, and each excuses themselves from action. And I think like what Great Big Green Week does is it helped turn it on its head. It's like citizens are out there, they are acting, and we want leaders to lead. So politicians, we want you to step into this space. We want you to make more action possible. And businesses, in fact, year on year, more and more businesses are engaging with Great Big Green Week. So it's an opportunity for businesses to sort of celebrate the action that they're taking, and to invite others into it. So it kind of helps flip that on its head. It can be really powerful. MPs really are motivated by what their constituents are interested in. So, by coming and seeing it firsthand, it can be really powerful drivers of change. And I think at a time when our politics feels increasingly polarised and divided, moments like Great Big Green Week that show that actually this stuff isn't niche, it's not elitist, this is normal, this is about everyday lives, this is about like the basic fundamental things we need for life, this is about warm homes, it's about good food, it's about clean air to breathe, spaces for our kids to play, it's about our health. That's really hard to argue with. We're keen to do more of that as we go into Great Big Green Week 2026.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think, politicians are human like the rest of us. And I think it's when we have something happening right in front of our eyes and actually seeing real life events happening in the community, that's much more compelling for anyone compared to just reading the statistics. There might be a survey done that says 80% of people support more climate action. But if you don't see anything happening on the street, in your town square, it's not as emotionally compelling. So yeah, I really, it's actually inspiring me a lot, because I think the work that I'm doing with Urban Wilding Hub is at the moment fully online, and it's all about connecting people across distances, to talk about and learn about urban wilding. But I'm thinking in the future we could have these moments of, you could have a Wild London Day where across all the sites in London that are being rewilded, you have events, and you have you sort of get that critical mass of actually getting people engaged with their wilder spaces, and this could become something that spreads to other cities as well. So yeah, it's definitely planting a seed in my mind.
I love that, Ross. Come and do it with us as part of Great Big Green Week. It'll be fantastic.
Plans for this year's Great Big Green Week. So tell us the dates and anything in particular about that.
Yeah, so Great Big Green Week 2026 is going to run from the 6th to the 14th of June. So save the date. Our theme is Together for Good. Sort of celebrating the action that is happening. We're a coalition. We bring people together across a diverse range of organisations we discussed together to create change for good together. But also, as we've described, there are lots of communities doing all kinds of fantastic work. So it's about kind of celebrating that action that's happening. So we would love for you and your listeners to get involved, and that can be, can take so many different forms. From you talked about kind of the opportunity for Urban Wild Days to shine a spotlight on the action that's happening. It could be an architect opening up a kind of green home that's been designed for climate resilience. It could be kind of a guided walk through an urban green space. It could be planners hosting a community conversation around what do we want from this place? How might this place become more resilient in the future? There's so many different ways that people can get involved. And I think, thinking about kind of your community and your listeners, I think there's something that can be really exciting where you kind of connect those different bits of technical expertise to local place. And by sort of saying to communities this place matters, and these are the different things that you can do to protect it and to celebrate it together, that can unlock a lot. So we've got a website. It's greatbiggreenweek.com. And if you go to that, you'll find a whole raft of resources around different ideas for events, different ways to get involved. There's an organiser hub to make it as easy as possible. But you don't just have to organise an event. You could go along to an event. So it opens for event. Folk can register their events on the website, and that's opening really, really soon. And so once you get closer to the week, you'll definitely find something near you. There's also events held online. So lots of kind of talks and workshops happen online. But also it's an opportunity to tell your story. So if there's something that you're up to, Great Big Green Week can be a fantastic platform to kind of get that story out into the world and to connect with others that might be doing something similar. So whether that's through social media, whether it's through a blog, whether it's through kind of press releases, releasing a report, there's something here for everyone. I suppose at the heart of all of this is people don't protect what they don't love. So Great Big Green Week really starts with that love of place and turns it into action. So it's really connected to your work around placemaking. And so I think Great Big Green Week could be a huge moment for your community. It's this kind of national hook. As I said, we've got greatbiggreenweek.com. There's a load of resources there. And there's a community of thousands of others taking part in this at the same time. And the 1.2 million people who took part last year, each of those events, they all started with one person who cared about the place where they loved enough to do one thing. So it just needs one person to think, we could do something here. Find the others. There are always others. Whatever you're interested in, wherever you are, there are always others. Invite them in and just get started.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think the sort of more long-term lesson for architects and urban planners and developers is there are ways of designing in the opportunities for community to form when you're designing places or making changes to places. And we have to be really mindful about the fact that we're kind of creating we're setting the stage for all this these relationships to build. And I think there's really, you know, in the place that you're designing, is there a community centre? Is there a shared open space that people will naturally be passing through and they get a chance to meet each other? Is there food growing space? All these things are like, they become the hubs of communities, where the chance encounters can happen, where, you know, relationships can form. And then there's also like a real kind of, you know, there's the ongoing management side of it as well, which I think as designers, we often don't put enough emphasis on. But this thing of, you know, can there be some money put in for the next couple of years to make sure there's annual, you know, there's regular events being run somewhere like Ebbsfleet Garden City, who I know through a previous job I was doing. They put a lot of effort into you know, having this ongoing events and community days and all this kind of stuff happening in that new place that they're building out, so that as people move into their house, they're not just isolated, they're having opportunities to come out and meet their neighbours. And, you know, all that kind of sparks off opportunities for people to form communities and to do this work together down the line. Yeah,
those moments of connection really matter, and it can just be sort of something so fleeting. Kind of a quick conversation at the school gate, you know, as you're buying a pint of milk at the local store, you know, over a pint in the pub. You know, it's those moments of connection that can lead to big change.